Welcome. Unified Communications with Zulu Desktop. This video is to provide helpful guidance for secure and efficient remote working thanks to Zulu Unified Communications Desktop Client. First, we will explain the administration configuration requirements on the PBX server side and then the end user experience when working remotely using Zulu Desktop. So, specifically in this video, we're going to cover the Zulu server requisites and configurations, as well as how to start using Zulu Desktop once the server component is ready. So, what is Zulu? Zulu is our unified communication solution for free PBX and PBXact. It is licensed per user, that is, per extension that is going to use it. In the case of PBXact, the required license already comes included with the software. Whereas in FreePBX, users can get their licenses in the store section of our Sangoma portal. Two main software components make up the complete solution. The Zulu server component, which is the actual module running inside the PBX, and the Zulu clients themselves, running in each worker's computer or mobile phone. Zulu Desktop is available in Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, while Zulu Mobile in Android and iOS. So, where and when can we deploy Zulu? In this diagram, we can see a common scenario where Zulu is available for local workers, but at the same time, remote workers are not left out. They can keep working from the outside world without ever having to give up their own extensions. The VoIP signaling and media of those remote workers traverse securely within WebSockets and WebRTC technology. This embedded secure communications approach without any need for VPN tunneling is what makes Zulu stand out when compared to other soft phones or desk phones, making it a top choice for remote workers. Configuring the Zulu server component. First, some network considerations. For PBXs that are not directly exposed to the internet, which is actually recommended, the following network configurations are required. NAT network address translation. This is configured in the PBX under *zip settings. Port forwarding must be set in any firewall, SBC, or router between the PBX and the internet. In a specific, the following ports must be forwarded. TCP port 80 is not a Zulu port, but it is needed for the validation of the TLS certificate if using Let's Encrypt for generating the certificate. Not actual web interface access will be granted, as rather this 80 port gets reserved for Let's Encrypt. TCP port 8002 is a Zulu bin port, while the UDP ports for RTP communications, which are by default 10,000 through 20,000. In cases where we experience one-way audio or no-way audio in the external Zulu calls, an ICE host candidate can be added under *zip settings. It is simply in the format local IP address and public IP address. Prerequisites in the PBX. So, in order to have the PBX ready and start using Zulu, the following prerequisites have first to be met. Please note that, depending on the status of your PBX, some or most of these prerequisites could already be correctly configured in your system. We are going to review all of them regardless. First, the version of the PBX must be 14 or newer for full support of all Zulu features. The Zulu module, of course, has to be installed and running in the PBX. For proper operation, Zulu and all other PBX modules must be up to date. In the PBX Advanced Settings, these parameters have to be set. Enable the mini HTTP server. Enable TLS for the mini HTTP server. Set the force WebSocket mode as PJZip. Enable the *REST interface. Set the zip channel driver as both. Fully qualified domain name in the PBX. This is for proper secure WebSockets and WebRTC communications. If the public IP of our environment is not static, we can use a dynamic DNS service here for this. Next, a valid, that is not a self-signed TLS certificate, must be installed and set as the default certificate of the PBX. Also, secure WebSockets, WS and WSS must be enabled. Configured under *zip settings, chan PJ-zip settings. Finally, Zulu must be enabled for the user's extensions that will use it, of course. This is done under the user management module. Again, as mentioned, some or most of these all prerequisites can already be configured in your system. We are going to check and configure them in detail one by one next. Okay, so here we are in our PBX web interface. We're going to log in and check that the prerequisites are met, as well as the network considerations. Here we are in our dashboard. As you can see, everything and every service here in the left is running correctly, except for the last one, Zulu Diamond, which we'll take care about later. So regarding the network configurations, we need to go to Settings, *zip settings to check for the NAT settings. As you can see here near the beginning of the page, we have the NAT settings section, with the public IP address already populated, as well as the local network. This was automatically introduced in the first installation wizard of PBXact. Right down below it, we can see the RTP settings ports. These are the UDP 10,000 through 20,000 ports we mentioned before that need to be open in the firewall, SBC, or router in our network. Other ports that we mentioned that need to be open are the 80 TCP port, as well as the TCP port 8002 that is used by Zulu. If we were to have one-way audio issues or no audio issues with Zulu external calls, we will need to configure these parameters inside the ICE host candidates. We need to add a candidate for the first section with the local IP address of the PBX, and the section right next to it with the public IP address of our environment. We can do so as an example now. We get the public IP address and the local IP address. And submit the changes. Onto with the prerequisites. As a first prerequisite, we had that the PBX must be at least version 14. We do comply with it here in our installation. You can see here near the top we have PBXact 14. Also, of course, the Zulu module has to be installed. We go to Modules, Admin, Updates. Under Updates, we go to Module Updates and check for Zulu under the Admin category. It's here near the end. It is already installed. Another prerequisite is that all modules should be up to date, including obviously Zulu. So we're going to check if they are up to date. We extend the selection to Commercial Modules and click Check Online. We can see that, for example, the Blacklist module, it's not up to date. There's an online upgrade available. The same we can see down below here for the Calendar module. The rest of modules seem to be okay, up to date. We're going to click Upgrade All. It instructs me to click Process. Gives me a short summary of what will be updated. We confirm. Return, and now our models are updated. All of them, as we can see. Next, we need to go to the PBX Advanced Settings. Here we need to enable these two options, display read-only settings as well as override read-only settings. Submit so we can see the read-only settings. It instructs us to make sure that the mini HTTP server is enabled, and it is by default in this installation. The same for the TLS for the mini HTTP server. It is already enabled. For WebSocket mode, it tells us to set it to PJZip. Next, we need to find the setting regarding asterisk REST interface. We search it in the web browser, we find it and enable it. We also need to change the setting regarding zip channel driver. It is in both, so that is okay for our system. We click submit. Next, we need to configure the FQDN for this PBX. The reason why we need a FQDN is because we need to assign a valid certificate TLS to the PBX. This is a requirement from WebRTC Communications. So we go to Modules, Admin, System Admin, DDNS. So here we can confirm that the dynamic DNS service provided by Sangoma via the sysadmin pro module is working as expected. We can see that the URL related to the deployment ID is there, assigned with the public IP address that the server has detected. We see that the service is enabled by default and that we can even force another public IP address if the one detected by the server was not to be correct. Please take note of this URL because we will use it next for the certification creation option. Down below in port management, we can enable the port that Let's Encrypt utility will be using to generate the TLS certificate. This is done down here in the Let's Encrypt row under Insecure Port HTTP. We enable port 80 and then Update Now. With this, we are ready to go to the Certificate Management module under Admin and generate a new certificate with Let's Encrypt. The first thing we have to do here is update our firewall to enable the Let's Encrypt packets that will be sent to our server for validation reach our server. Then in the certificate hostname, we need to put the URL that we had from our PBX in the dynamic DNS module. As the owner email, we can put an email that will receive any notifications from the certificate authority, and the rest of the options we can leave it as they are now. Once the certificate has been created, we see it here listed under the default certificate that already came in our PBX default installation. We need to select it as default certificate. Now we have a valid TLS certificate and not a self-signed one. The next thing we need to do is verify that the secure WebSockets are enabled for PJZip communication. This is done going to Modules, Settings, *Zip Settings. There, go to the CHAN PJZip settings. Going down below, we see that WS WebSockets as well as WSS Secure WebSockets are both enabled in our system. One of the last things we need to do is just apply all the configs we have done so far. And after that, we will just need to reboot the system to have everything ready. For rebooting, just go to Modules, System Admin, Power options, reboot, and type reboot. Once the server is back online, we can verify that the Zulu process is correctly running. For that, we go to Modules, Admin, Zulu Module. In that module, at the top, we can see the phrase Server Status Running. The last piece of configuration we need to do is under User Management, Admin, User Management. Under there, you can define which users will be allowed to use Zulu. We can do so one by one by entering and editing the user, or we can go to Groups and create a new group for Zulu users. We will do so now. Here under Users, we select the users that will be allowed to use Zulu. For example, extensions 201 through 205 will be remote workers needing to use Zulu. After that, we go to the Zulu tab and enable all the features we want for them. For example, every feature available. Then we submit, and finally apply config. This concludes the configurations parts on the server side. Now we just need to download the clients on the Zulu computers and start using Zulu. Having the Zulu server component already properly installed in our PBX, we are just left off with the task of installing the Zulu clients in the computers and or mobile phones of the remote workers. For this, we go to this wiki article page, and if we want to install the desktop client, we just click here and on the download blue button. This will take us to this Zulu download software desktop page where we can see the different versions available. At the beginning, just Windows 64 bits, but if we click on show all versions, we get their corresponding versions for Mac OS or Linux. Having selected a stable channel, we can download our preferred version. Once the download is completed, we just click on the file to start installing it. And then we click Finish to open Zulu for the first time. Now we are ready to log in. In the Zulu desktop client, each user just needs to log in using his username and password. That information he should have gotten from the PBX administrator via the user management. Those are the credentials he needs to use, the ones from the user management module. He logs in as follows. In the user field, just type the username or extension at the URL of the PBX server and his password. For the port, we leave it as it is, 8002. Remember that we already did a port forwarding of that TCP port in our firewall, router, or SBC in the middle. We click Login. Once inside, we can start using Zulu. We have the activity information in our first icon, that is, all the streams, either calls or instant messages, will appear there. Next, we have the keypad. For making any calls, we can paste numbers there and edit them and call. We have the history button for all the call history or just filter out missed calls. We have the voicemail section. For visual voicemail access, we have all or just new ones, and search either for contacts in the PBX for Zulu users or for rooms, instant messaging rooms that we have created. The rooms are created in the activity section, create room. Same, we can filter out here rooms, all the information from our activity stream, or only the direct messages. The presence we can control in the section in the upper section, and we have available, chat, away, DND, do not disturb, or extended away, or unavailable. This presence information gets reflected everywhere in our PBX. So every UCP client, every Zulu client, either desktop or mobile, will have this information available from the other users. So, for instance, instant messaging will appear a pop-up in the operating system. For example, if another user were to send us a message, the operating system will give the pop-up, and we can see this in the activity section. We can reply, we can send emojis, of course, GIFs, and everything will be displayed in the main section of the Zulu window. As you can see, even URL links will get a little display of its contents, and if we filter here in the right section, we can filter out shared links as such. Regarding calls, there are many different ways user can start doing a call using Zulu. For instance, every time they see a blue number beneath a name, either in the main section area or in the left panel, they can click that number and to start the call. Also, of course, they can use the keypad or search a contact by typing the first letters of the contact and clicking the number that it will be shown, or if the user has further information stored in the PBX, they can expand the information of the contact and call any of those numbers. Let's call the extension. Hello, this is a call. I'm gonna hang up. Thank you. With this, we conclude our video on how to install, configure, and start using Zulu Unified Communications Desktop Client.